Well, welcome to the 700 Club. Idalia has now strengthened into a hurricane as it takes aim at Florida. The National Hurricane Center is warning there's a risk of life-threatening storm surge and dangerous winds in the next 2 days.
Idalia could have sustained winds of up to 120 miles per hour, making it a Category 3 hurricane. Abigail Robertson brings us this look at how the Floridians are preparing to face this storm.
Almost 50 counties along Florida's west coast have declared a state of emergency, and Governor Ron DeSantis has taken a break from the presidential campaign trail to hunker down with Florida residents preparing for what is expected to be a major storm.
This is going to be a major impact, and Floridians should expect that this storm will be a major Cat 3+ hurricane.
Idalia already wreaked havoc through Cuba as a tropical storm on Monday, with high winds, mass rain, and flooding. The storm is gaining strength as it heads towards Florida, where it's on track to make landfall Wednesday morning, although it could start hitting the state with hurricane-force winds as early as tonight. An area known as Big Bend, just north of Tampa, may see a direct hit, but the storm could shift at any time. At least 8 counties along the coast have ordered mandatory evacuations ahead of what could be deadly storm surges.
If you're planning to get away, you start ahead of time because the traffic, it's no kidding, it's horrible.
The Tampa International Airport shut down all flights for today and will remain closed until it can assess the damages later in the week.
We start preparing, putting away all my patio furniture, bringing in anything out there that's loose and can fly away, getting the sandbags.
Water, food, and other supplies are flying off the shelves in Florida as residents prepare for what could be days without power. The Florida National Guard is on standby as the state prepares for the biggest storm since Hurricane Ian last September, which decimated the Fort Myers area and claimed the lives of at least 150 people. Adding to the stress, the recent major storms have caused a home insurance crisis in Florida. Many policies now cost almost 50% more than last year, and some insurance companies have withdrawn from the state entirely. Heavy rainfall is expected in the southeast after the storm moves through Florida, with the storm projected to move through Georgia and South Carolina by the end of this week. Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
Well, if you're in the path of that horrible storm, please obey the evacuation orders. Try to get out and get to safety and get to high ground. The storm surge can absolutely be deadly, and you never want to get caught in it. Operation Blessing is pre-positioning disaster relief kits in our Ocala warehouse in Florida. We want to be ready to help those in need after this storm clears through. But if you're in this path, please get out. In other news, the date has been set for President Trump's trial on charges of trying to overturn the 2020 election. It will come the day before a major political primary. John Jessup has that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
That's right, Gordon. The trial date is scheduled for March 4th of next year. Trump lawyers wanted the trial in April of 2026, arguing that it was necessary to deal with the huge volume of evidence they're reviewing for what they call an unprecedented prosecution. But the judge disagreed, setting the trial date just 1 day before the widely anticipated Super Tuesday primary.
Date holds, it would mean that the Washington case would be the first of the 4 criminal cases against Trump to reach trial. It would also come 1 day before Super Tuesday, which is a crucial date in the presidential nominating calendar because of the huge number of delegates that are up for grabs.
Many Trump supporters have argued that the legal cases essentially are political, being set in the middle of the presidential primaries. And a new poll for Newsweek finds that a majority of Democratic voters who backed President Joe Biden in 2020 think the investigations and criminal indictments against Trump constitute, quote, an interference in the 2024 presidential election. 58% of 2020 Biden voters believe the charges are interference, compared to 27% who disagreed. And overall, just under 60% of Americans think the 4 cases constitute interference versus just under 20% who disagreed. The poll also found that 57% believe Trump will be found guilty and imprisoned on at least one of the 4 criminal indictments. Well, California's Attorney General has sued a Southern California school district over its new policy requiring schools to notify parents if their children change their gender identification or pronouns. Attorney General Rob Bonta is seeking a court order to immediately block the policy. It's the latest round in an intensifying battle between a handful of school districts and the state about the rights of trans kids and their parents. Bonta said policies like the one adopted by Chino Valley Unified School District will forcibly out transgender students and threaten their well-being. But the district's board president and supporters say parents have a right to know the decisions their children are making in schools. A couple of nearby districts have adopted similar measures, and at least one more is considering doing so. Well, also in California, after 35 years in business, Nordstrom closed its store in San Francisco Sunday. The closure comes as crime and homelessness have been on the rise in the city's downtown. Foot traffic at the once vibrant store had dropped off substantially, and other stores in the area have also pulled out. The Nordstrom store was the Westfield San Francisco Center, which also lost other key locations. Critics in the city are blaming political leaders for the increase in the problems that have led businesses leaving. Well, turning now to the tragic fires in Hawaii. Amid all the tragedy, stories of survival and miracles are starting to surface. CBN's Wendy Griffith is in Maui with a first-hand look at the devastation, along with God's divine protection.
Just over a month ago, I was staying in what used to be this beautiful oceanfront inn right here on Front Street in Lahaina. I was staying in room number 4, which I think was right about here. As you can see, it's been totally consumed by the fire. Just devastating.
Just next door to the inn where I stayed, David and Christian Mello's condominium building is still standing, although not livable. There's no water, no electricity, and even talk, it may be condemned.
This is our paradise home. When we come here, we sit on the lanai, we do our devotion, pray, and now we have nothing to come back to.
Monday, the Mellos retrieved a few precious items from their home, including Christian's beloved paddleboard, one of her favorite hobbies, which miraculously was unharmed, although the cover did have a burn hole. Fortunately, the couple was on the other side of the island when the fires started.
It's heartbreaking to walk down here and see all our neighbors' homes burnt down to the ground. We got each other, we love each other, and we're going to make it no matter what, where we go, whatever. God's with us.
And we had to go into the smoke. And it was
dense.
So dense, so thick. It was darker than a night without stars and moon, like super dark, like I've never seen.
Harvest Kumalani pastor Lucho Bonto says he and his family are lucky to be alive. He showed us how the fire came down the hill, then jumped over the highway into his neighborhood, but amazingly spared his house.
I didn't know how bad it was at that moment. 2 days later, listening to stories, I learned how close we were from death and how that was a miracle.
Although his home looks untouched from the fire, it too is not livable. No water, no electricity, and no way of knowing how long before Lahaina's infrastructure will be restored.
Where are you staying now?
I'm staying at a bed and breakfast that someone is donating temporarily to us, and we're looking for a place.
Even though David and Christian and Pastor Lucho are temporarily displaced, as believers, they haven't lost hope and are even helping others through this tough time.
I think there's so many miracles that have happened through this tragedy, and you can see God in those miracles. And out of ashes, beauty is coming out.
Wendy Griffith, CBN News, Maui.
Beauty for ashes and miracles in the midst of tragedy. Gordon?
Well, there's always hope in the middle of a tragedy. Jesus said it so clearly, in this world you will have trouble, but be of good cheer, for I have overcome the world. Our hope should never be in our homes or in our jobs, our careers, our bank accounts, anything like that. All of that can get taken away. But what can never be taken and what can never be shaken is the kingdom of God and His wonderful blessings. All we have to do is say, I'm going to turn to Him.